Hi, Jack Canfield back with you. My next guest on Talking About Success is Dr. Judy Morgan. For over 30 years, she's been an internationally renowned holistic veterinarian and has been an advocate for animals, helping pet owners maximize health for their beloved companions. I know for a lot of people, their pets are their children, really. And over the past 2 decades, she has revealed the truth behind industrial pet food ingredients. Not all good stuff. And in the process, she's written a series of books teaching her followers a better way to feed their pets. Now, here are just some of the books. From Needles to Natural, right? Like eating food instead of getting all these vaccinations they don't need that get in their way. We're going to talk, I want you to talk just, even though we're going to talk mostly about your new book, which has to do yin and yang, nutrition, for dog food, I want you to at least talk for a minute about fleas and all the bad news that comes from putting that stuff on the back of the necks of our pets. It's written a book called Canine Kitchen Capers, a humorous look at preparing food for dogs and spouses. And the book we want to talk about today, because you've been on my show before and we have interviewed about these other books, but I love this, Yin and Yang Nutrition for Dogs, subtitle Maximizing Health with Whole Foods, Not Drugs. So, God, I just love what you're doing because you're a radical out there. You're taking on the big guys, all the food industry and the pharmaceutical companies, and you're still alive,
I am. It's a little scary sometimes.
which is really good. So, what made you write a book about a cookbook? It's a follow-up to all your other books. What brought that about?
Well, so in the first book, I gave all these different scenarios. You have a pet with diabetes, you have a pet with seizures, a pet with cancer. And I said, well, there's foods that can help with those problems. So, for instance, if you have a pet with seizures, that's closely related to the liver generally. So, we want to feed things that would help the liver, dark leafy greens, sardines, eggs. But I didn't give recipes or really how to do that. And so people kind of said, well, okay, that's great information, but how much and how often? And so, I got all these emails and I said, oh, I guess I better actually make recipes. So I decided that I would put together a recipe book to make it easier for people so that, you can go through the book and you say, oh, my dog has this problem. And you flip to that part and you go, oh, I can make that.
Mm-hmm. What I was shocked when I opened up the book and I see something like this, which looks like a plate with all this different food on it. But these are all the ingredients that you might grind up into raw food, mash up or something.
So they could be ground and fed raw. They could be cooked, depending on the size of the dog. So I happen to have a lot of rescue dogs, and they don't have very many teeth left because they're mostly teenagers.
That's my dog.
So yes, yours has great teeth.
No, it doesn't actually. It's got
the
two.
Big, I know, they're awesome.
Yeah.
So, so for our dogs, we run everything through a grinder. And so if we're going to cook it, a lot of times it's in the form of a meatloaf. And otherwise, we will scoop it raw into the bowl for those that can eat raw. Mm-hmm. And the less processed it is, the more nutrition remains. So it just depends on the pet.
Okay, keyword processed. So less processed. So I would say all, if not at least most of the dog foods that we buy in cans and in bags, they've been processed.
Bagged and canned definitely been highly processed.
Yeah, so talk about why that's not good.
So we call it dead food. So when you buy a bag of kibble, the dry food, that generally has been cooked at very high temperatures, at minimum of 5 times by the time you get to the end product. The other problem is one of the pet food companies proudly will tell you, if you call them, that if you open their bag of dog food 25 years from now, it'll be just in the same condition that it is right now.
That's scary.
That is really scary because that's a lot of preservatives.
Yeah.
And so what they use for preservatives a lot of time are chemicals that are toxic and are known carcinogens. And if you think about, your pet eats the same food in general. Most people take that same exact thing and pour it in the bowl over and over and over. So if there's a toxin in there, it's really building up in their body. Mm-hmm. Whereas for us, if we ate something that was a little bit toxic, well, we're going to eat it once. We're not going to eat it every meal, every day for 10 years straight. So there's a huge difference. And 2 of the biggest preservatives are salt and sugar.
I didn't know that.
And they don't belong. That's why processed food is so salty and sugary and has high fructose corn syrup, because they're great preservatives. Our pets don't need either of those things. So why are they there in such high quantities? They're there so that the pet food is good 25 years later.
Wow. So raw food being a big thing. Are you saying everyone should feed all their pets raw food all the time?
Depends on the pet. It's an individual thing. I will say that I do a lot of rescue work, and every foster pet that comes into our house, they're generally coming with, I take the ones with the big medical problems because I can deal with it. I literally will take them from whatever awful food they came with, because it gets thrown away before they walk in the house, and I will start them on raw instantly, and 99% of the time they do really, really well. The biggest problem, so you would think if you had a dog and you fed them, raw meat, they would say, wow, that's so great. Like, you're giving me real meat. You're giving me chicken. You're giving me beef. A lot of them don't recognize it as food because they've been so used to eating a dry cracker their entire life that the texture just blows them away and they don't even recognize it as food.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. Well, I know whenever I fast, I miss the crunchiness of food, I can see how a dog might do that. So if this is so powerfully healing, powerfully supporting the longevity of the life of your dog, etc., why aren't more veterinarians telling us this? Why is not this the mainstream approach?
Unfortunately, the nutrition classes that are taught in veterinary school are sponsored heavily by big pet food and big pharma. And so literally we're given kind of what I call the alphabet soup for the prescription diets. And you have a dog with kidney disease, you give them the soup or the food that is labeled as a prescription kidney diet or a prescription heart diet. And the problem is those are dead food, and when it's the nutrition has basically been cooked out. So what they do is they add a lot of chemical, synthetic vitamins and minerals back in to actually provide the nutrition. But that's not, you don't get the same nutrition from that that you would from eating live, fresh, particularly organic, grass-fed, happy food. So they're not taught that in veterinary school. Like, literally, nutrition is about 1 hour in school. So most veterinarians have no idea how to formulate a diet or how to balance a diet. And, they warn, so you don't eat a complete and balanced meal twice a day or 3 times a day every single day. But the myth in the veterinary industry, which has been perpetuated by big pet food, is that if your pet does not eat a 100% complete and balanced meal, every single meal, they will die. So veterinarians tell their clients that. Oh, what do you mean your home cooking is food? He'll die. You can't possibly balance a meal. Well, sure you can. And I see pets all the time who have been eating very unbalanced meals that their owners thought they were doing the right thing by home cooking. They're not dead. 10 years later, they're not dead. They're doing just fine. Maybe they're not in 100% maximum perfect health, but they're actually healthier than what they would have been on something processed with chemicals.
Talk about the economic incentives of not recommending this, because as I know, almost every veterinary office I've ever been in, they've got the pet foods they're selling, which I assume is part of the profit motive of the...
Absolutely. 20% of the clinic income can be...
20%.
20% of the clinic income can be that food. It's
so
huge.
So it's kind of economically self-defeating if I'm presenting you with a better diet.
Yeah, so when a client comes in and I spend time and I say, yeah, here's the diet I want you to cook for your dog. Oh, by the way, it's going to cost you half the price to cook that for your dog or to, prepare this. And you can do it in a couple of hours and have a whole month's worth of food, no problem, put it in the freezer. It's going to cost you less than that prescription diet. So for your veterinarian, you're not coming back in the door every month to pick up food. You're not spending money. You're not walking in the door, because usually what happens is you walk in, oh yeah, while I'm here, let me do this and this, and and you spend more. So they want you coming back in for that point of purchase every month.
Yeah.
They're not making anything if you're making the food yourself.
So I hope it's not this nefarious, but the reality of it would be, from my perspective as well, that if your dog's healthy and they don't get sick, then you never bring them into me for treatment and all that kind of stuff as well. I don't know if that's conscious, but it certainly plays out.
Well, and that's part of the problem with the vaccines. So for years, veterinarians have used the card that says your dog is or your cat is due for shots, and that's what gets you to come in the door. And we now know and have very good proof and evidence, and it's even recommended by the veterinary big groups, the AVMA, AHA, that we don't vaccinate any more often than every 3 years, minimum. And it really could stretch to every 5 or every 7. But 60% of the veterinarians still vaccinate every year because that's how they get you to come in the door. So if you got a card that said your dog is due for an exam, you might go, "Yeah, he looks good to me." But if you get a card that says he's due for shots, you're like, "Oh, I better get him in for those shots."
Right. So I want you to talk about one more thing, and I'm going to ask you about where you're going next with everything, because I know you're always on the next horizon. You taught me something the last time we interviewed about fleas and flea powders and flea ointments and all that kind of stuff. So we've stopped doing that. But talk about why.
Oh, so it's actually gotten worse. So there are we in the past have used the topical flea and tick drops very commonly, and they're once a month application, which, it's all about convenience.
Yeah, we get little things to put on our calendar.
It's all about convenience for the pet owner. Unfortunately, it's very toxic for the pets. They absorb those chemicals and take them in. So there are now newer, bigger, better, and really much, much more deadly chemicals. So there's this group of chemicals called isoxazolines, and they were originally looked at to be crop pesticides. Unfortunately, they were so toxic to the environment because if they get in the waterway, it kills the fish and the marine life. They were so toxic they couldn't be used as a crop pesticide, so they made them into oral pills.
Oral pills.
To give your dog.
Oh my God.
To kill fleas and ticks, and they last for 3 months. So you give this to your dog 4 times a year, and it never leaves their body. So we have tens of thousands of reports of adverse event reactions and deaths, and yet the FDA will not pull this because there's not enough evidence.
I think you told me. I think you told me too that there was like a higher incidence of cancers in the necks where people were putting the flea
absolutely,
drops
absolutely. So now, so with the topicals, yes, absolutely, we were getting skin cancers and autoimmune disease, and now with these new oral chemicals that are stored in the body and just really never disappear. And the other thing is, the dogs are shedding the metabolites of that when they're out in your yard, and if you have a koi pond and that's washing into your koi pond, you're going to kill your fish with the metabolites that are coming out of the pets. So, but it's just bad for the pets in general. So we're seeing higher incidences of cancer, higher incidence of endocrine disease, so Cushing's, diabetes, thyroid. It's never ending because we're just poisoning them all the time. It needs to stop.
I know.
So that's why I do what I do.
I know. It's important. It's important. So what is the next big project for you? What's on the horizon?
So I've got some courses that I'm working on. And it's really, for me, I'm using social media and I'm using really any means I have. I'm speaking. It's really all about educating the pet owners so that they can have a conversation with their veterinarian and just say, look, I'm not going to take it anymore. I love you. Please do an exam on my pet. Please, run the lab work. Please tell me, what things we need to be working on. But I'm not going to settle for the chemicals and the over vaccinating and the bad food. I want to really help the pet owners keep their pets healthier and alive longer because they're part of the family. And for me, when I lose one of my little kids, it's like losing one of my little kids.
Oh, I know.
I know.
And my wife is going like 3 months of grieving when we lose a pet.
I mean, it just devastates me. And I see that with the pet parents that I work with. And so I want to empower them to take a stand and do the best that they can.
So how can people... I assume all your books are available in all the usual places like Amazon.com, your website, and so forth.
Yep.
And you have other products too.
I have a supplement line.
Exactly.
And on my own website, drjudymorgan.com, I hand pick the products. So we use essential oils for flea and tick prevention, and we have essential oil shampoos and conditioners and good supplements. And so I hand pick everything for the pets and the owners so that, if they come to me for a recommendation or a suggestion, if they see it on my website, and there's a ton of blogs and videos and information that I've put out there because I want to educate people.
Right. And along those lines, you're available for speaking, workshops, all kinds of things to help people get this word out there.
Absolutely.
So you're one of my heroes, by the way. You are.
Thank you.
You are like to the veterinary world, like Dr. Joe Marcola is to the human world. Like, let's start eating healthy food. Let's stop toxifying ourselves. A doctor once told me that the only problem for your health is getting too much of something you don't need and not enough of something you do need.
Exactly.
And this is exactly what you're working with as well. So you're one of my heroes, as I said. So I literally want to encourage you. This book is amazing. Yin and Yang, Nutrition for Your Dogs, and all your other books, which are available on your website and also other, on the online bookstores and so forth. I really encourage you to reach out, connect with her, read these books. If you have pets you love, for many of you, they are like your children, and let's treat them with the same care we treat ourselves. Many of us are eating organic now. We're doing the right things. We have an anti-vaccination movement in America for children. We need to do the same thing for our pets. So thank you for being courageous enough to keep on doing all this work. I love you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jack.
And I encourage you, get in touch with these books, read them, and then do them. That's the most important part. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this message.